On the vast canvas of pre-Columbian history, Peru emerges as an archaeological treasure, revealing fascinating chapters of humanity dating back millennia. Among these distant periods, the Lithic period stands as a silent witness of the first steps of the civilizations that shaped the rich cultural tapestry of this region. On this archaeological journey, we will immerse ourselves in the mysteries of the Lithic period in Peru, exploring the primitive tools, cave paintings, and ancestral customs that characterize the lives of those who laid the foundations of our history. From the shores of the Pacific to the high mountains of the Andes, we will discover how these ancient communities shaped their environment and left a lasting mark on the history of Peru. Join us on this journey through time, where stones tell stories that have withstood the passage of centuries. We will divide the video into two groups. The first will cover the general aspects of the Lithic period and the second will consist of each culture. In the video description we will be leaving the exact minute where we started the second point. Without further ado, let's get started. Part 1. Lithic period. The Lithic period in Peru, also called pre-agricultural, these human groups had a parasitic or predatory economy. They did not know the technique of agricultural production, their food sources came from hunting, gathering and fishing. In this period, the production of the first stone elements for hunting large animals began. At this stage human groups were nomadic. The Stone period, also called the Paleo-Indian period, spans from 45,000 to 7,000 BC. In this period, the production of the first stone elements for hunting large animals began. At this stage, human groups were nomadic, they lived in caves or rock shelters, where they made engravings or rock paintings. On the walls of these caves the first inhabitants of the current Peruvian territory left their mark through drawings. Show chart. According to the chronology of Peru carried out with the historian John Rowe, within the ceramic period of Peru, the Lithic period designated by Guillermo Lumbreras would be included. Within the Lithic period we find cultures such as Lauricocha, Paiján, Toquepala, Chivateros, Guerreros Primero and Paiján. In turn, the Lithic period is divided into three phases: Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic. Something that characterized the inhabitants of the Lithic period was the fear of natural phenomena. The archaeological evidence found allows us to specify that this man has beliefs and superstitions. He is an animist since he is worshipping natural phenomena, such as, for example, rain, earthquakes, lightning, thunder, etc., which he can't explain and which he fears. When one of these phenomena occurs, man seeks protection in his rock shelters, which could well have been caves or caverns, and stops to look for a solution or interpret what is happening. Fear leads him to offer sacrifices to appease the inclemencies of nature, is generally offered to the youngest of the band, the last to be born. The sacrifice of children in the Lithic period can be understood since in this period the older members are productive agents and it would be harmful to offer a hunter or gatherer as a sacrifice, which is why man chooses to quench the thirst of nature with infants. The Paleolithic period or ancient age of stone, we can affirm that it covers from the origins of life to the emergence of new agricultural techniques. During that time the use of tools such as carved stones, bones, leather, wood, etc. was implemented. It is even here where humans discover fire. The term was created by archaeologist John Lubbock in 1865, this period being the longest in history. The period is divided into three phases: Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic, Upper Paleolithic. Men and women were organized in groups united by ties of kinship. New forms of organization began starting from the family group. The division of labor began, whose first expression must have been the distribution of tasks according to sex. While the men pursued large game prey or fought with rival groups, the women dedicated themselves to raising children, collecting plants and obtaining food that did not involve separating themselves too much from their children. In the lithic industry, the laminar technique was used, which consisted of producing elongated instruments, with parallel and cutting edges, very similar to today's knives. The technology whose raw material was bone was oriented towards the manufacture of throwing weapons, many of which show a decoration that can be considered artistic. Lithic period in Peru. Time of initial settlement of the territory. It was confirmed that the Lithic period was also part of the American settlement that began approximately 20,000 years ago, during the end of the Pleistocene when the Andes were still covered by glaciers. The current Peruvian coast was more humid than today. The Peruvian jungle was more tropical and impenetrable with an abundance of flora and fauna. During this period, agriculture was not yet developed and tools were mainly designed in stone. The magnificent Andean man constantly struggled to adapt to the geographical environment of very abrupt relief and large mountains. The first Peruvian inhabitants were possessors of extensive skill in making utensils and new specialized hunting techniques. The Peruvian man was a hunter, gatherer and fisherman, initially practicing a parasitic economy. The first Homo sapiens from North America arrived in this region of South America, with quite limited cultural advances. These men lived in a state of nomadism due to their inability to produce food on their own, taking shelter in caves or rock shelters because they did not yet know how to build their homes. They developed a parasitic economy. They depended on what the geographical environment provided them. The Peruvian man was progressively establishing himself in our geographical environment, especially in the Puna or High Andean Plateau. The Puna is a region of low atmospheric pressure, less diffusion of oxygen in the air and a frigid climate, with little rainfall and an average annual temperature of 6 centigrade Celsius to -7 centigrade Celsius. All these geographical factors, combined with the relief, have given several endemisms to the region, which has also been the cradle of various pre-Columbian cultures. It has historical importance for having been the place where various civilizations emerged, such as the Tiwanaku culture, and the domestication of plants such as the potato and animals such as the llama was carried out. Due to its environmental and ecological characteristics, it is a unique natural region on the continent, and due to its altitude it belongs to the so-called Puna region. Main characteristics of the Peruvian Lithic period. The Lithic period constitutes the first evolutionary period of Peruvian man. It is also known as the pre-agricultural or nomadic hunter period. During this time, man will basically dedicate himself to indiscriminate hunting and gathering, that is, he prefers to hunt pregnant females or offspring, extracting them directly from their burrows. The lithic tools they handle make hunting a very risky activity, therefore, they go in search of disadvantaged animals, even though this contributes to the extinction of different species. Thus, the first Peruvian presents a subsistence, consumption or simply parasitic economy. This man faced the great megafauna typical of the end of the Pleistocene, the Ice Age. Bands constitute the first form of human organization. They are composed of 30 or 40 individuals led by the best or most experienced hunter. The different hunter-gatherer groups of the Lithic period shared general criteria among themselves regarding the manufacture of their stone artifacts. This has allowed, in the case of the Central Andes, to group them into 4 large groups of lithic traditions. 1. Tradition of the Far North. The hunter-gatherer groups are characterized by having simple stone artifacts, worked only by percussion, and only on one of their faces, unifacial artifact, with the absence of lithic points. The use of these artifacts was multiple, non-specialized tools, and is related to economies of hunting small animals, fishing and gathering. It is present in Piura, Tumbes, Cajamarca and southern Ecuador. 2. Paijánense tradition. Paiján is the name given to an archaeological complex located on the northern coast of the national territory. The name Paiján derives from a town located on the northern bank of the Chicama torrent, in the district of Paiján, Department of La Libertad. The archaeological remains found belong to the Andean or Palo-American Lithic period. Hunter-gatherer groups are characterized by having elaborate pedunculated points, that is, with a peduncle or appendix in the lower part of the point, of various sizes, predominating those of large dimensions, Paiján point or Paijánense point, worked by carving percussion and pressure. Associated with this type of point, simpler stone artifacts such as scrapers, knives, perforators and grinding stones are usually found. The burial of the dead is practiced. Hunting small and medium-sized animals, fishing and collecting. It is present from Lambayeque to Ica, in coastal and Yunga areas. 3. Lauricochen's tradition. Hunter-gatherer groups are characterized by mainly possessing foliaceous points, leaf-shaped, along with lithic artifacts such as scrapers, perforators, knives, scrapers, hammers and grinding stones. Hunting of camelids and deer is practiced, and to a lesser extent small animals, along with the collection of plants. The practice of funerary burial is little known. It is present in the central and southern mountains of Peru. 4. Vizcachenense tradition. Hunter-gatherer groups are characterized by mainly having triangular and foliaceous tips, a style very different from that of the Lauricochense tradition. Hunting of camelids and deer is practiced, and to a lesser extent small animals, along with the collection of plants. It is mainly found in the Peruvian-Bolivian highlands and the southern mountains of Peru. Part 2. Cultures of the Lithic period. The Lauricocha culture. It was a pre-Inca civilization that flourished in the central region of the Peruvian Andes, specifically in the basin of the Marañón River and its tributaries, around 10,000 BC. This culture represents one of the oldest societies in the Andes and played a crucial role in the evolution of Andean civilizations. In this culture the first human remains with deformed skulls were found. They also carried out first burials with offerings since they were funeral homes, especially with a religious nature. Guitar Player's Man. The Guitarrero Cave is located 45 kilometers from the city of Huaraz and 2 kilometers from the Xapulli district, Yungay province, in the foothills of the Cordillera Negra, 150 meters above the level of the Santa River and 2,900 above sea level. It is a cave whose mouth faces east, where at dawn the sun rises. It was occupied between 10,000 and 9,000 BC. It is known that these caves were used as a temporary camp during the hunting season and also correspond to the beginnings of agriculture in Peru, becoming an important testimony of the first primitive groups that inhabited these areas in remote times. The main activities that took place around this cave were hunting and gathering. Remains of corn, chili, bean, squash, paular, aluco, lucuma and osier crops have been found. As well as stone instruments, the first that Andean man produced by sculpting flakes, where a projectile point and a knife stand out, both bifacial, corresponding to the Lithic period. In archaeological excavations, beans, pilares and other evidence of domestication have been found and the presence of primitive corn has been confirmed. They were discovered and studied by the American archaeologist Thomas Lynch. Man from Paiján. Flea Cave Man or Piqui Machi, located 19 kilometers north of the city of Ayacucho, in the district of Paiján, province of Huamanga. Studied by the North American archaeologist Richard McNish, he found lithic artifacts, along with bone remains of already extinct animals, dating back to 20,000 years before Christ, considering the oldest presence of human presence in Peru. They contain artifacts made from flakes with modified edges. The bifacial carving trend seems clear and the selection of silicified rocks reflects the intention to search for and know how to select good raw material. Snitch Man. Discovered in 1961 by archaeologist Edward Lanning, guided by data provided by Thomas Patterson. He explored the Chivateros and Cucaracha hills, finding a large number of lithic instruments, similar to Jabo's finds in Venezuela. It is stated that the resident of Chivateros began to use stone, wood, mud and everything he found in nature to survive. They dedicated themselves to hunting in the hills of Carabelo and Ancon where there were large numbers of foxes, deer, llamas and guanacos. From the sea in the river they extracted fish and shellfish, also hunting sea lions. They also obtained insects, seeds and edible plants. They were always forming groups because it was easier for them to hunt to obtain food and shelter. The lithic utensils were worked with the percussion technique and in their initial phases they mainly made unifacial scrapers. In the most recent ones, elongated bifacial spearheads were made in the shape of leaves. The inhabitants of the Chillón River lived at the beginning of the Holocene period characterized by the retreat of the ice and the extinction of megafauna. Toque Shovel Man. Toquepala is located in the district of Ilabaya, in the province of Jorge Basadre, department of Tacna. In the art gallery we find various cave paintings, with various hunting scenes, which represent hunters cornering and killing a group of guanacos. In order to make these paintings, several colors have been used, including red, yellow, black and white. These scenes would have been made for magical religious purposes, with the aim of promoting a good hunt. The Toquepala man is considered the oldest and most famous cave painter in Peru. The Devil's Cave, where his paintings were found, is considered the most important Paleolithic art gallery in Peru. It was initially explored by Miomir Bojovich, and carefully studied by archaeologists Emilio Gonzalez and Jorge Muel. Paiján man. It was found that the first complete human fossil remains of a man and a woman were the oldest complete bone remains in Peru, located in the valleys of Viru, Pacasmayo, in the Chicama River Basin, coast of La Libertad. In the place complete human remains of a 25-year-old woman and a child of approximately 12 years old were found. The settlers of Paiján were fishermen, hunters, and gatherers who lived in the early Holocene, about 12,000 years ago, when productive activities, agriculture and livestock, were not yet practiced in the Andes. And in this way we would be finishing the explanation about the Lithic period in Peru. But now it's your turn to tell us, what did you think of the video? Did you have any questions? We will be attentive to read you in the comments. If you found the video useful, we would appreciate it if you gave it a like to support our project and if you subscribe. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.